Cook speaks Chinese in front of the chef. The next day The lunch rush was at its peak when the yellow kitchen phone rang for the third time that morning. Emily quickly wiped her hands on her apron and answered hurriedly, not noticing that all the noise around her had suddenly stopped. Wei nai nai, shi de wo hen hao, she said in fluent Mandarin, her voice carrying a tenderness that contrasted with the rush of the environment. The pot of tomato sauce slipped from Michael's hands, shattering on the floor with a crash that echoed through the entire kitchen of Hope Village restaurant. The executive chef, with his 32 years of culinary experience, stood completely still, his eyes fixed on the woman who had worked as his head cook for the past 6 months. The words he had just heard stirred something deep in his memory, a feeling he couldn't explain, but that made him tremble inside. Emily noticed his piercing gaze and quickly switched to English. "Sorry, Mom, I have to go. Work is crazy today," she said, hanging up the phone with more force than necessary. Michael remained frozen for long seconds, ignoring the sauce spilled on the floor and the other staff watching him curiously. There was something about those Chinese words, the intonation, the affectionate way she pronounced nai nai. It was as if a long-locked door in his mind was trying to open. You speak Chinese?" he asked, his voice coming out weaker than he intended. Emily stared at him for a moment, her expression shifting completely. Her face, which had shown tenderness on the phone just moments ago, was now tense and defensive. "I don't know what you're talking about. It was just my mum," she replied, turning back to the counter and grabbing a knife to chop onions with abrupt movements. "But I heard you speaking." "You heard wrong," she cut him off, not looking back. "I have work to do." The rest of the day passed in an odd atmosphere. Michael couldn't focus on anything else. Watching Emily's every move, every expression, every gesture, there was something familiar about her that he just couldn't place. The way she held the knife, how she tilted her head when concentrating, how she bit her lower lip when thinking. All of it stirred fragmented memories that danced at the edge of his consciousness without ever fully forming. Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, don't forget to like and especially subscribe to the channel. It helps us a lot as we're just starting out. Now, continuing. The next morning, Michael arrived at the restaurant earlier than usual. He found Emily already in the kitchen prepping ingredients for the day. She wore the same blue apron as always, her hair tied in a simple bun, but there was something different in her eyes, a restlessness that hadn't been there before. "Emily, we need to talk," he said, approaching slowly. She stopped chopping vegetables and looked at him. "About what happened yesterday. I know you were speaking Chinese." "Michael, I already told you misheard," she replied, but her voice trembled slightly. "I didn't mishear. I recognize that language when I hear it." Emily set the knife down on the cutting board with a sharp clatter. "So what if I know a few words? Is that your business?" "It's not a problem, but..." Michael hesitated, searching for the right words. "It just brought back some memories. Memories from when I was a child." Emily's face paled for a moment before she composed herself. "I don't know what you're talking about, and if you keep making these weird accusations, I'll have to find another job." "Accusations? Emily, I'm not accusing you of anything, it's just that nothing," she snapped. "You're making things up that don't exist. Now let me work in peace." Michael was taken aback by her reaction. There was an intensity in Emily's voice that went beyond mere irritation. It was fear. But fear of what? The day passed in a tense atmosphere. Emily avoided looking at Michael, and he, in turn, couldn't take his eyes off her. During the lunch break, an elderly customer entered the restaurant. It was Ms. Liu, a Chinese woman who had frequented the place for years and always ordered dishes adapted to her taste. "Good morning, dear," Ms. Liu said to Emily, who was carrying a tray to the dining area. "Could you bring me that special seasoning you make? The one with ginger and..." "Dangran ke yi liu popo, wo mashang ge nina," Emily replied automatically, with a warm smile. The silence that followed was deafening. Ms. Liu smiled contentedly, but Michael, who had witnessed everything from the kitchen doorway, felt as if he'd been punched in the gut. Emily realized her mistake instantly, the color draining from her face. "I mean, "Of course I can bring it, Ms. Liu," she quickly corrected in English, but it was already too late. Michael watched carefully as Emily returned to the kitchen. There was something in the way she walked, in her posture, that stirred a deep familiarity. And then he noticed. The way she held chopsticks when serving Asian dishes was perfect, natural, like someone who had grown up using them. That afternoon, when Emily went to the locker room to change, Michael made a decision that would change everything. He began leaving little tests around the kitchen, a menu written in Mandarin he forgot on the counter, some ingredients with Chinese labels, a handwritten traditional mapo tofu recipe. Emily tried to ignore these items, but Michael noticed how her eyes always lingered on them a few seconds longer than necessary. Once he even saw her gently touching one of the recipes, her fingers tracing the Chinese characters as if reading a love letter. "Jennifer," Michael called one of the waitresses at the end of the shift. "Have you noticed anything different about Emily lately?" Jennifer, a middle-aged woman who had worked at the restaurant for over 10 years, glanced around before answering. "Funny you should ask. Yesterday I saw her crying in the locker room. She was holding an old photo and didn't see me. When I walked in, she quickly hid it and pretended she wasn't crying." "A photo of what?" "I couldn't see it clearly, but it looked like a child, a little girl." Michael felt his heart race. There was something going on here that went far beyond a simple cook who could speak Chinese. That night, after everyone had left, Michael stayed alone in the kitchen, thinking. His childhood memories had always been fragmented. His parents, Catherine and Robert Thompson, had told him he'd had a sister, but that she had gone to live with other people when he was very young. They never spoke much about it, and whenever Michael asked, his mother would become visibly emotional and change the subject. He vaguely remembered a Chinese nanny who had cared for him as a child. Ms. May, that was her name. A kind woman who taught him words in Mandarin and made delicious dumplings. But those memories were so old and hazy, he was never sure if they were real or just childhood dreams. The next day, Michael decided to discreetly follow Emily after work. He saw her board a bus headed toward Chinatown, the heart of New York City's Chinese district. The entire ride, she seemed nervous, constantly looking over her shoulder as if she suspected she was being followed. Emily got off at Mott Street and walked a few blocks before stopping in front of a modest care center called Sunrise Home. Michael watched from a distance as she entered the place with familiarity, greeting the receptionist in Mandarin. 2 hours later, when Emily left, Michael noticed her eyes were red, as if she had been crying. There was a deep sadness in her expression that contrasted with the mask of indifference she wore at work. The next morning, Michael arrived early at the restaurant and found Emily frantically rummaging through the kitchen trash. "Did you lose something?" he asked. Emily startled, clearly not expecting to find him there. "No, I just thought I threw something important away." "What exactly?" "Nothing much. Just some personal papers." Michael noticed a torn envelope on the floor. When Emily walked away, he discreetly picked up the pieces. Later, in his office, he pieced them together like a puzzle. The envelope was addressed to Emily Lee Chen Thompson, and the sender was Sunrise Home Care Center. Thompson, the same last name as his. The pieces were starting to fit together in a way that made Michael tremble, but there were still too many unanswered questions. That afternoon, during the dinner rush, Michael decided to confront Emily once more. He found her alone in the pantry, organizing ingredients for the next day. "Emily, I need to know the truth." She took a deep breath, not turning to face him. "What truth?" "About who you really are. About why you speak Mandarin perfectly but pretend you don't. About why you have the same last name as me." Emily dropped the bag of rice she was holding. "I don't know what you're talking about. Your full name is Emily Lee Chen Thompson, isn't it?" She slowly turned, her face pale as paper. "How did you— It doesn't matter how I know. What matters is that you tell me the truth." Emily stayed silent for long minutes, her eyes filled with tears she refused to shed. "Fine," she finally said. "Yes, I speak Mandarin. I was raised by a Chinese family. Satisfied." "Why lie?" "Because some truths are too dangerous to tell." "Dangerous how?" Emily stared at him intensely. "Do you really want to know, Michael?" Because once I tell you, there's no going back. Michael's heart pounded so hard he was sure Emily could hear it. I need to know. Then let's get out of here. I can't talk about this at the restaurant. They went to a small nearby cafe. Emily ordered jasmine tea and stayed silent for several minutes, her hands trembling slightly as she held the cup. Michael, what do you remember from your childhood? Fragmented memories. My parents were always evasive about certain things. I know I had a sister, but they never talk about her. Emily closed her eyes for a moment. And do you remember a Chinese nanny? A chill ran down Michael's spine. Ms. May, how do you know about her? Because she was my adoptive grandmother. Michael's world seemed to collapse. Emily's words echoed in his mind like a distant whisper. Your grandmother. Mei Li Chen. She raised me after my adoptive parents died in an accident when I was 5. But before that, she was the nanny for 2 children in Williamsburg, a boy and a girl. Michael couldn't breathe properly. Are you saying that? I'm saying I've known you forever, big brother. Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, don't forget to like and especially subscribe to the channel. It helps us a lot as we're just starting out. Now, continuing, Michael's coffee cup slipped from his hands and shattered on the floor, but he didn't even notice. Emily's words echoed in his mind like a whisper in a deep cave. Big brother, he repeated, his voice barely a whisper. You're my sister? Emily nodded slowly, tears finally streaming down her face. Emily Thompson. That was my original name, before I became Emily Li Chen. Michael felt as if he were dreaming. The fragmented memories of his childhood began to make sense. The little girl who played with him in the backyard. The crystal-clear laughter that echoed through the house. His mother's inconsolable crying one particular morning when he was just 4 years old. Why? Why didn't you tell me from the beginning? Emily wiped her tears with the back of her hand. Because I wasn't sure if you'd remember me. And because I was afraid. Afraid of what? Afraid you'd reject me. Afraid to find out our family no longer wanted anything to do with me. Michael tried to process it all. For 6 months, his sister had worked beside him and he hadn't recognized her. But now, looking at her with this new perspective, he could see the familiar features. Her eyes were the same as their mother's. The shape of her face was similar to his own. How could he have been so blind? How did you find me? It wasn't hard. You're well known in the culinary scene, but I wanted to be sure it was really you before approaching. When I heard the Hope Village restaurant needed a cook, I applied. 6 months ago. 6 months I've been trying to gather the courage to tell you the truth. Michael shook his head, still trying to take it all in. Our mother. She needs to know. She never got over your leaving. Emily's face twisted in pain. She's still alive. Of course she is. She's 68 and lives in the same neighborhood where we grew up. And our father is alive too. Michael hesitated. That's a complicated story. Our parents separated 15 years ago. Dad never got over the guilt of letting you go. Emily squeezed her eyes shut. Guilt? They abandoned me, Michael. It wasn't like that, Michael said gently. Our parents went through a terrible financial crisis when you were a baby. They couldn't afford to raise 2 children. The idea was that Ms. May would take care of you temporarily until they could get back on their feet. Temporarily? Emily's voice rose. I never saw them again. Because by the time they finally stabilized, Ms. May had moved and they couldn't find her anymore. Mom searched for you for years. Emily fell silent for a long moment, processing this. Ms. May never told me that. Maybe she was trying to protect you. Or maybe she knew our parents wouldn't come back, Emily countered, bitterness clear in her voice. Michael didn't know what to say. The situation was more complex than either of them could have imagined. Emily, our mother needs to know you're alive and well. She'll be what? Happy? After more than 25 years? She'll be overjoyed. Emily shook her head. It's not that simple, Michael. I've built a life. I have responsibilities. Ms. May is sick and needs me. Ms. May is still alive? Yes, but she has advanced dementia. She's at the care center you've seen me visiting. That's why I'm always speaking Mandarin on the phone. It's the only language she still understands. Michael felt a pang of sadness. Ms. May had been an important figure in his childhood, even if briefly. I'd like to see her. Michael, Emily hesitated. There's more you need to know. Things Ms. May told me over the years. What kind of things? About our family. About the real reasons I was given to her. Michael felt a chill in his stomach. What do you mean, real reasons? Emily took a deep breath. Let's go to the care center. If you really want to know the whole truth, you'd better hear it from Ms. May herself. In her moments of clarity, she still remembers everything vividly. The trip to the care center was made in silence. Michael watched Emily as she gazed out the bus window, noticing how she seemed weighed down by an invisible burden. There was so much sorrow in her eyes that he felt guilty for not recognizing her sooner. The Sunrise Home Care Center was a modest but well-kept place. Emily greeted the receptionist in Mandarin and English, introducing Michael as a friend. They went up to the second floor, where they found Ms. May in a wheelchair near the window. The elderly Chinese woman, now in her 80s, looked as fragile as porcelain. Her white hair was tied in a simple bun, and she wore a blue cardigan that accentuated the delicacy of her wrinkled hands. "Nai Nai," Emily called softly in Mandarin. "I brought a visitor." Ms. May looked up and, for a moment, seemed confused. But then her eyes settled on Michael, and a look of recognition crossed her face. "Xiaofei," she said, using the Chinese nickname she used to call Michael when he was a child. Michael felt tears burning his eyes. Even after all these years, with her mind affected by dementia, she still remembered him. "Hi, Ms. May," he said, stepping closer and taking her hand. "How are you?" The old woman's eyes filled with tears. "Xiaofei, I've been waiting for you to come back. Mei Mei is here too," she said, looking affectionately at Emily. Emily translated for Michael. "She's calling you by the nickname she used when you were little, and Mei Mei means little sister." Ms. May began speaking rapidly in Mandarin, her words tumbling over each other. Emily translated as she spoke. "She says she has important things to tell you, that she's waited a long time for this moment." Michael sat beside the elderly woman and gently held her hand. "Ms. May, I remember you. You taught me to count in Mandarin and made those delicious dumplings." "Jiaozi," Ms. May said, smiling. "You always asked for more jiaozi." Emily sat on the other side of her grandmother, and Ms. May took both their hands. "Now she wants to tell the whole story," Emily said, after listening to more words in Mandarin. What followed was a revelation neither sibling was prepared to hear. Ms. May, in her moments of crystal-clear lucidity, explained that she had been more than just a nanny to the Thompson family. She had been Catherine's confidant, the mother of Michael and Emily, and had witnessed the entire crisis that led to the family's separation. "She says our mother couldn't stop crying," Emily translated. "That Dad had lost his job, and they were facing eviction. They didn't even have money for food." Michael listened in growing silence as the story unfolded. "Ms. May offered to take care of me temporarily without charging anything until things got better. She says our mother only agreed because I was going hungry. But why did you never see each other again?" Ms. May spoke for several minutes, her voice growing weaker as emotions overwhelmed her. "This part is hard," Emily said, her own voice trembling. "She says after a year our parents got back on their feet financially. They came to get me, but she lied." "What do you mean she lied?" "She told them I had gotten seriously ill and that I hadn't survived." Michael felt his blood run cold. "Why? Why would she do that? Why?" Emily kept translating Ms. May's words, tears streaming down her face. "Because in that year she had grown too attached to me, and because she saw how much our mother was suffering, she thought it would be better for everyone if I stayed with her. She says she thought she was protecting me from a life of instability." "Oh my God," Michael whispered. "She wants to ask for forgiveness," Emily continued. "She says she spent her whole life regretting that decision, but by the time she realized her mistake, it was too late. I had grown up, had a new identity, and she didn't know how to fix what she'd done." Ms. May spoke a few more words in Mandarin, her voice barely audible. "What else is she saying?" that our mother never stopped looking for me, that Ms. May received phone calls from her for years and always lied, saying she knew nothing. Michael stood abruptly, walking to the window. The betrayal was almost unbearable. Ms. May, whom he remembered so fondly, had destroyed his family. "Michael," Emily called, "she wants to say one more thing." He turned reluctantly. "She says our mother never fully recovered, that even after all these years, she still cries for her lost daughter, and that our father still blames himself to this day for the decision to let me go away temporarily." Ms. May let out a deep sob and kept speaking. "She's saying she taught me Mandarin and raised me in Chinese culture because she knew I'd discover the truth one day, and she wanted me to value both cultures. She says she loves me like a granddaughter, but she always knew I had another family." Michael returned and sat beside the elderly woman again. Despite his anger and confusion, he could see genuine remorse in her eyes. "Ms. May," he said gently, "you need to help us fix this now." The old woman nodded frantically, speaking quickly in Mandarin. "She says yes, that's why she encouraged me to look for you. She knows she's getting sicker and wants to see the family reunited before it's too late." Michael looked at Emily, who was visibly shaken by the revelation. "Emily, I know this is a lot to process, but our mother needs to know you're alive. And how do you think she'll react when she finds out the person she trusted lied to her for decades? She'll be devastated, but also relieved to know you're okay." Emily stood and walked to the window. "Michael, I don't know if I'm ready for this. My whole life was built on a lie. I grew up thinking I'd been abandoned, when in truth, I was emotionally kidnapped." "But you weren't abandoned. Our mother always loved you." "How can you be so sure?" "Because I lived with her pain my entire childhood. She never spoke about you directly, but I saw how sad she got every time she saw a girl your age. How she kept your baby clothes in a box in the closet. How she cried silently on your birthday." Emily turned to face him, her cheeks wet with tears. "And our father?" Michael sighed deeply. "Dad never forgave himself. He started drinking after you moved away, and we could never track her down again. Our parents' marriage never recovered. They separated when I was 17. Because of me. Because of the situation. Because of the pain everyone carried." Ms. May got their attention, speaking again in Mandarin. "What's she saying now?" Emily listened carefully. "She wants to give us something she kept all these years." The old woman gestured for Emily to open the nightstand drawer. From inside, Emily pulled out a faded old shoebox. Inside were photographs, letters, and a few small objects. Emily picked up one of the photos and gasped. "Michael, look at this." It was a photo of Michael around 4 years old, holding a baby in his arms. Both were smiling at the camera, and in the background was a young woman Michael immediately recognized as his mother. "This photo was taken a week before I left," said Emily, turning the photograph over. On the back, it was written in Mandarin and English, "Michael and Emily, siblings forever, 1997. There were more photos, baby Emily in her crib, Michael and Emily playing in the backyard, the whole family gathered for Christmas, and letters. So many letters." "These are letters our mother wrote to you over the years," said Michael, recognizing the handwriting. "She never sent them because she didn't know where you were, but she kept writing." Emily opened one of the letters with trembling hands. "My dearest Emily, today you would have turned 10. I keep wondering how you are, if you've grown your hair out, if you still love to draw like you did when you were little. Your brother is doing well. He's in 5th grade now and is very smart. Sometimes he asks about you and I don't know what to say. How do you explain to a child that we lost his little sister? I know you're happy wherever you are. Ms. May has always been a good person, and I'm sure she's taken good care of you. But my heart aches for you every day. If you ever read this letter, I want you to know we never stopped loving you, that you were and always will be our beloved daughter. With all the love in the world, Mom." Emily couldn't finish the letter. She collapsed into sobs, clutching the paper to her chest. Michael hugged her, equally emotional. Ms. May watched her 2 grandchildren with a mix of relief and deep sadness. Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, please take a moment to like and subscribe to the channel. It helps us a lot as we're just starting out. Now, continuing. They stayed at the care center for 2 more hours, going through all the letters and photographs Ms. May had saved over the years. Each item was a piece of their shattered family puzzle, and proof of a love that had never faded. By the time they left, it was already night. Michael and Emily walked in silence through the streets of Chinatown, both processing everything they'd uncovered. "Michael," Emily finally said, "I need time to think about all this. I understand it's a lot for one person. It's not just that. I have a life here, responsibilities. Ms. May depends on me, and there are other people I can't just abandon. No one's asking you to abandon anything, but our mother lived 26 years believing I was well cared for. A few more days won't change anything." Michael stopped walking. "Emily, a few days could change everything. She's 68. None of us know how much time we have. You're emotionally blackmailing me. I'm asking you not to waste any more time. We've already lost too many years." Emily turned to face him, her eyes glistening with unshed tears. "What if she rejects me? What if she decides it's too late? What if none of that happens? What if she's so happy she faints from joy? What if this is the happiest moment of her life?" Emily was silent for a long time. "All right," she finally said, "but I want to do this my way." "What do you mean?" "I want to talk to her first, alone, explain who I am, tell my side of the story. Only then can you show up." Michael didn't love the idea, but he understood Emily's need to control the situation. "When?" "Tomorrow, after my shift at the restaurant." That night, Michael barely slept. He kept imagining how his mother would react upon learning that the daughter she'd mourned for decades was alive and working in her own son's restaurant. The next day at the restaurant, Emily was visibly nervous. She burned 2 dishes during lunch and dropped an entire tray of desserts. Michael wanted to help, but he knew she had to handle this her way. At 5 in the afternoon, when the restaurant closed for the break between lunch and dinner, Emily changed and prepared to leave. "Michael," she said before stepping out, "give me our mother's address." He wrote the address on a piece of paper. 247 Blossom Street, Williamsburg. It's a blue 2-story house with a white fence. She still lives in the same house we grew up in? The same one. She never wanted to move. Always said it would be the first place you'd look if you ever came back. Emily took the paper with trembling hands. "If something goes wrong," "Nothing will go wrong. But if it does, promise you won't force me into anything?" "I promise." Emily left the restaurant, and Michael stayed alone in the kitchen, counting the minutes. He tried to distract himself by organizing the stock and prepping ingredients for dinner, but his mind was entirely focused on what was happening at their mother's house. Meanwhile, Emily stood in front of the blue 2-story house, gathering the courage to ring the bell. The house looked exactly as she faintly remembered from her earliest memories. The garden was well kept, with colorful flowers that showed the care of whoever lived there. Finally, she pressed the doorbell. A woman with graying hair and tired eyes opened the door. Catherine Thompson looked older than her 68 years, with deep wrinkles around her eyes that spoke of many shed tears. "Good afternoon," Emily said, her voice coming out weaker than she intended. "Are you Catherine Thompson?" "Yes, that's me. Can I help you with something?" Emily took a deep breath. "My name is Emily. I need to talk to you about something very important." Catherine studied her curiously. "You're not from the neighborhood, are you?" "No, ma'am. I came from far away." "Come in, dear. Let's talk more comfortably." The inside of the house was cozy and clean, decorated with old but well-maintained furniture. Emily noticed several photos of Michael at different ages scattered on the shelves, but felt a pang when she realized there were none of her. "Sit down," Catherine said, gesturing to the couch. "Can I offer you some tea?" "Please." Catherine went to the kitchen and returned a few minutes later with 2 cups of chamomile tea. "Now tell me, what's so important that it brought you here?" Emily gripped the cup tightly, searching for the right words. "Miss Catherine, did you have children?" "I had 2. My son Michael works in the culinary field, and I had a daughter." Her voice cracked slightly. "I had a daughter I lost when she was very young." "Lost how?" Catherine looked at Emily with curiosity. "Why do you want to know about this, dear?" Emily set the cup on the table and took a deep breath. "Because I believe that daughter is me." The silence that followed was deafening. Catherine went completely still, as if she hadn't understood the words. "What did you say?" "My name is Emily Thompson. I was born on March 15th, 1995. I was raised by a Chinese woman named Mei Li Chen, whom you knew as Ms. May." The teacup slipped from Catherine's hands and shattered on the floor, but she didn't even notice. Her eyes were fixed on Emily, searching for something familiar in the young woman's face. "That's impossible," she whispered. My daughter didn't survive. Ms. May told me." Ms. May lied. Catherine stood abruptly, pacing the room like a caged animal. "No, no, no. This can't be happening. I mourned you for 26 years. Mom," Emily said softly. The word hit like a gunshot. Catherine stopped pacing and slowly turned to Emily. "What did you call me?" "Mom. If you're really Catherine Thompson, and if I'm really your daughter Emily, then you're my mother." Catherine began to tremble violently. She stepped closer to Emily slowly, as if approaching a ghost. "Show me your right arm," she said suddenly. "Why?" "You had a birthmark, a small crescent moon-shaped mark on your right arm." Emily rolled up her sleeve, revealing the exact mark Catherine had described. "My God," Catherine whispered, collapsing onto the couch. "It's you, it's really you." The two women stared at each other for long minutes, tears streaming down their faces. "Emily? My little Emily?" "Yes, Mom. It's me." Catherine hesitantly reached out her arms, and Emily threw herself into them. They held each other tightly. 26 years of separation partially healed in that moment. "I never stopped looking for you," Catherine sobbed. "I never stopped hoping you'd come back." "I know, Mom. I saw the letters." "What letters?" "Miss May kept every letter you wrote to me over the years." Catherine pulled back slightly to look at Emily's face. "You're beautiful. You grew into a beautiful woman." "You're beautiful too, Mom. How was your life? Where have you been all these years? Are you okay? Do you have a family, children?" The questions tumbled out and Emily laughed through her tears. "One question at a time, Mom. We have plenty of time to talk." "We do? You're staying?" Emily hesitated. "It's complicated." "Why?" "Because I've built a life somewhere else. And because there are things about my absence you need to know." Emily then shared the whole story she had uncovered the day before, how Ms. May had lied to protect her, how she had been raised in Chinese culture, how she had searched for Michael and ended up working at his restaurant. "You work at your brother's restaurant?" Catherine asked, disbelieving. "For 6 months. He didn't know who I was until yesterday. Does Michael know you're here? He's the one who gave me the address." Catherine stood quickly. "I need to call him. He needs to come here now." "Mom, wait. I wanted to talk to you first, just us." "But why? We're family. We need to be together." Emily lowered her eyes. "Because I don't know if I can stay." "What do you mean?" "Ms. May is very sick. She needs me. And there are other responsibilities in my life I can't just walk away from." Catherine sat back down beside Emily. "Sweetheart, I understand you have other responsibilities, but we lost 26 years together. We can't waste any more time." "I know, Mom, but it's complicated." "What else is worrying you?" Emily took a deep breath. "I'm afraid it's too late, that we won't be able to be a real family after so long apart." Catherine took Emily's hands in hers. "Emily, listen carefully to what I'm about to say. There's no such thing as too late when it comes to a mother's love. You could be 40, 50, 60 years old, and you'd still be my child. The time we lost was painful, but the time ahead is a gift. What if it doesn't work? What if we realize we're too different? Then we'll figure it out together, but we can't give up before we even try." Just then, the doorbell rang. Catherine and Emily exchanged glances. "That must be Michael," Catherine said. "He could never wait when he's anxious." Catherine opened the door to find Michael standing on the sidewalk, visibly nervous. "Hi, Mom. How's everything?" "Come in, son. There's someone here you already know. Michael walked into the living room and saw Emily sitting on the couch, her eyes red from crying. "How did it go?" he asked. "Good," Emily replied. "Better than I expected." Catherine looked from one child to the other, still hardly believing her family was reunited. "Find my children," she said, her voice thick with emotion. "Both my children are here." Michael stepped closer and sat beside Emily on the couch. Catherine took the armchair across from them, watching them both. "Now tell me everything. How did you two find each other? How did you discover the truth?" Michael and Emily spent the next hour sharing every detail with Catherine. She listened in silence, sometimes laughing, sometimes crying, but always hanging on every word. "And Miss May?" Catherine asked when they finished. "How is she?" "Very ill," Emily replied. "The dementia has progressed. She has moments of clarity, but they're becoming rarer." "I'd like to see her," Catherine said softly. "Are you sure after everything she did?" Catherine grew thoughtful for a few minutes. "Emily, Ms. May made a terrible mistake. She caused us immense pain and tore our family apart. But she also took care of you all these years. She loved you and raised you to be the incredible woman you are today. I can't fully forgive her, but I can't hate her either. You really want to see her. I do, and I want her to know that, despite everything, I'm grateful she took care of you." Michael was amazed by his mother's generosity. "Mom, you don't have to do this." "I do, son. If we're going to rebuild our family, we need to make peace with the past." Emily stood up. "Then let's go. But I should warn you, she may not recognize you. The disease is quite advanced." The three of them went together to the care center. Along the way, Catherine kept asking questions about Emily's life, trying to recover 26 lost years in just a few hours. When they arrived at Ms. May's room, the elderly woman was asleep. Emily gently woke her. "Nai, I brought someone to see you." Ms. May opened her eyes and saw Catherine. For a moment she seemed confused, but then her eyes widened in recognition. "Catherine?" she whispered. "Hello, Ms. May," Catherine said, stepping closer to the bed. The two women looked at each other for a long time. There was so much to say, so many emotions to process. Are you angry with me?" Ms. May asked in hesitant English. Catherine sat in the chair beside the bed. "I'm hurt, deeply hurt, but I'm also grateful." "Grateful? For taking care of my daughter, for raising her to be a good, strong person." Ms. May began to cry. "I'm so sorry, so sorry. I was wrong." "I know you were. But what matters is that we're here now, together. Emily is a good girl. She loves me very much. I can see that, and I love her too." Ms. May looked at Michael. "Xiao Fei is all grown now. Such a handsome man." Michael smiled. "You were in my memories too, Ms. May. I remembered your Jiaozi." "You remember?" she exclaimed, delighted. "You always asked for more Jiaozi." They talked for another hour. Ms. May had a moment of crystal clear lucidity and was able to express her feelings and regrets plainly. Catherine, though still hurt, showed a compassion that moved both Michael and Emily. By the time they left the care center, it was already night. "Mom," Emily said as they walked, "thank you for doing that." "Thank you for what?" "For being kind to Ms. May. I know it must have been hard." Catherine stopped walking and looked at her daughter. "Emily, Ms. May made grave mistakes, but she's part of your story. She helped shape who you are today. If I hated her, it would be like hating a part of you. You're an incredible person. I'm just a mother who finally found her daughter again." Michael watched their interaction with a heart full of emotion. His family was coming back together, and despite the pain of the past, there was hope for the future. "Now," Catherine said, "let's go home. I need to make a special dinner to celebrate this day." "Mom, you don't have to go to any trouble," Emily said. "It's not trouble, it's joy. I haven't cooked for my daughter in 26 years. Let a mother have this pleasure." Back at the blue townhouse, Catherine worked hard to prepare a special meal. Michael helped in the kitchen, and Emily watched the two of them working together, feeling a strange yet pleasant sense of belonging. During dinner, Catherine wanted to know everything about Emily's life, Her studies, her past jobs, her relationships, her dreams. "And you never got married?" Catherine asked. "No, I never found the right person." "And children?" "Not that either." Catherine smiled. "There's still time for all that." "Mom, I'm 26. I'm not a child anymore." To a mother, her children are always children. Michael laughed. "It's true. She still tries to give me advice on how to brush my teeth." "Because you've always been careless with hygiene," Catherine shot back, making everyone laugh. It was a magical evening. For a few hours they managed to be simply a happy family, forgetting all the pain and separation of the past. But as the night went on, Emily grew visibly uncomfortable. "What's wrong, sweetheart?" Catherine asked. "It's just, I need to leave." "Leave for where?" "Home. I have work tomorrow." "But you work at Michael's restaurant. Isn't that right, son?" Michael nodded but could see Emily's inner conflict. "Besides," Catherine continued, "you can sleep here. Your room still exists." "My room? I never changed a thing. It's exactly as it was when you were a baby." Catherine led Emily and Michael to the second floor of the house. She opened a door to reveal a small but cozy room, decorated in shades of pink and white. There was a crib, a dresser with diapers and baby clothes, and walls adorned with children's drawings. "Mom," Emily whispered, moved. "You kept all this?" "I always knew you'd come back one day." Emily walked around the room, touching each object as if it was sacred. "This was my bed." "Yes? And those were your favorite toys?" Emily picked up a faded teddy bear. "I remember this. I remember having a blue teddy bear. You called him Zuzu." "Zuzu," Emily repeated, hugging the toy to her chest. Michael watched, moved. His sister was reclaiming pieces of a childhood she barely remembered. "Son," Catherine said to Michael, "your sister needs something to sleep in. Can you lend her one of your shirts?" "Of course, Mom." When Michael returned with the shirt, he found Emily and Catherine sitting on the bed, talking softly. "What are you two talking about?" "The future," Catherine replied. "Emily is worried about a few things." "What kind of things?" Emily sighed. "Michael, I need to be honest with you. I don't know if I can stay here permanently." "Why not?" "Because my life is somewhere else. Ms. May needs me, and I have responsibilities I can't just abandon." Catherine took Emily's hand. "Sweetheart, no one's asking you to abandon Ms. May. She could move to a care home nearby. I can help pay for it." "It's not just that, Mom. I'm scared." "Scared of what?" "Scared that this is too good to be true. Scared that you'll get tired of me. Scared that I'm not the daughter you hoped I'd be." Michael sat on the other side of Emily on the bed. "Emily, you can have all the fears you want, but you can't run away because of them." "I'm not running." "No? Then what are you doing?" Emily was silent for a few minutes. "Okay, maybe I'm running a little. It's all so intense. Yesterday I was an orphan working at a restaurant. Today I found out I have a family who loves me and always wanted me back." "And that's a bad thing?" Catherine asked. "It's not bad. It's terrifying." Catherine hugged her daughter. "Emily, you don't have to make any decisions today. You can stay here tonight, tomorrow, next week. Let's take it one day at a time." "Are you sure you want me to stay?" "Sweetheart, I spent 26 years dreaming of this moment. I won't waste a single second now that you're here." Emily looked at Michael. "And you? Are you sure you won't regret finding me?" "Emily, you're my sister. I grew up knowing I had a sister somewhere in the world, and now that I've found you, I won't let you slip away again." "Even if I'm stubborn and complicated?" "Especially because you're stubborn and complicated," Michael laughed. "Just like the rest of our family." Emily finally smiled. "All right, I'll stay tonight. But tomorrow, we need to talk about a lot of practical things." "Like what?" "Like the fact that I'll keep taking care of Ms. May, like the fact that I need time to process all this, and like the fact that I don't want anyone to have unrealistic expectations of me." "I agree with everything," said Catherine. "But right now you need to rest. It's been a long emotional day for all of us." Michael stood up. "I'll head home, but I'll be back early tomorrow. We can have breakfast together." "Michael," Emily called as he was leaving the room. "Thank you for everything. We're family. That's what family does." After Michael left, Catherine helped Emily settle into the childhood bedroom. It felt strange for a 26-year-old woman to sleep in a nursery, but it was also comforting in a way Emily couldn't explain. "Mom," she said, before Catherine turned off the light. "Can I ask you something?" "Of course, sweetheart." "Do you really forgive me for being away so long?" Catherine sat on the edge of the bed. "Emily, you were a baby when you were separated from us. You had no choice in any of it. There's nothing to forgive on your part. But I could have looked for you sooner. How? You grew up thinking you'd been abandoned. Why would you look for people you thought didn't want you?" Emily thought about it. "You're right. Of course I am. Now sleep, my dear. Tomorrow we'll have time for longer talks." Catherine kissed Emily's forehead and turned off the light. Alone in the dark, Emily stared at the ceiling, trying to process everything that had happened in the last 24 hours. Her whole life had changed, and she wasn't sure if she was ready for it. But for the first time in many years, she felt truly at home. The next morning, Emily woke to the smell of coffee and homemade sweet bread. For a moment, she was confused about where she was, but then the memories of the previous day came rushing back. She went downstairs and found Catherine in the kitchen, preparing an elaborate breakfast. "Good morning, sweetheart. Did you sleep well?" "Very well, thank you. You didn't have to go to all this trouble." "It's no trouble, it's a joy. Michael will be here soon." As if summoned, Michael appeared at the kitchen door. "Good morning, family," he said cheerfully. "You're awfully lively for someone who works late," Emily remarked. "I closed the restaurant today." "What do you mean?" "I told the staff I had a family emergency, which isn't a lie." Catherine set full plates on the kitchen table. "Now sit, and let's talk calmly about how we'll organize our lives from here on out." Over breakfast, they discussed practical matters. Emily explained her financial situation, her responsibilities to Ms. May, and her mixed feelings about everything. "The first thing we need to do," Michael said, "is move Ms. May to a care home nearby. That way you can visit her every day, but won't have to live far from us. That'll cost a lot of money." "I'll help with the expenses," Catherine said. "Me too," Michael added. "The restaurant's doing well, and Ms. May is part of our family story now." Emily was moved by the generosity of the two. "You'd do that for me?" "We'd do it for us," Catherine corrected, "because now we're family, and families help each other." "But there's another problem," said Emily. "I'm not sure I want to go back to working at the restaurant. It would feel strange after everything that happened." Michael thought for a moment. "What if you didn't return as an employee, but as a partner?" "What do you mean?" "The restaurant needs to expand. I was thinking of opening a second kitchen, more focused on Eastern dishes. You have knowledge of Chinese cuisine that I don't. We could be business partners." Emily was surprised by the offer. "Are you serious?" "Completely serious. Besides, it would be a way to honor Ms. May and the culture she passed down to you. But I don't have the capital to invest." "I do, and Mom can lend us more if we need it." Catherine nodded. "I have some savings set aside. If it's to help my children work together, it's the best investment I can make." Emily looked back and forth between them, disbelief in her eyes. "You really want to include me in all this?" "Emily," Catherine said gently, "you're our family. There's no including or excluding. You belong here." "But what if I'm not good enough? What if I ruin everything?" Michael laughed. "Then we'll ruin it together. That's how family works." At that moment, Emily finally felt she could accept being part of that family again. It wouldn't be easy. There would be challenges and hard times. But for the first time in her life, she wasn't alone. "Okay," she said. "Let's try." "Try what?" "Being a real family." Catherine and Michael stood up at the same time and hugged Emily. It was a three-person embrace, one of people who had found each other after years of being lost and were determined not to lose each other again. In the days that followed, they worked together to organize Emily's new life. They found an excellent care home just 15 minutes from Catherine's house, where Ms. May could receive the care she needed. The transfer was easier than expected, especially after Catherine personally spoke with the administration to ensure Ms. May would have every comfort. Ms. May, in one of her lucid moments, understood what was happening and gave her blessing to Emily. "You need to be with your true family," she said in Mandarin, which Emily translated for Catherine and Michael. "I've done my part. Now it's time for you to do yours." The restaurant also underwent changes. Michael and Emily worked together to create a menu blending traditional American dishes with Chinese cuisine. They named the new section of the restaurant Golden Bridge, symbolizing the connection between the two cultures that were now part of the family's story. But not everything was easy. There were moments of tension when cultural differences and years of separation led to misunderstandings. Emily, raised in a more reserved and formal environment, sometimes clashed with the emotional spontaneity of her American family. Catherine, in turn, struggled not to overcompensate for the lost years by spoiling her daughter. Michael played the role of mediator, helping them understand each other and build a new family dynamic. "It's normal for it to be hard at first," he told Emily during one of their talks. "You're both learning how to be mother and daughter again." "Sometimes I feel guilty," Emily confessed. "Ms. May raised me, gave me love and culture. It feels like betrayal to enjoy being here with you so much." "It's not betrayal, it's growth. You can love and honor Ms. May while building a new relationship with our mother." Emily knew Michael was right, but feelings were complicated. The situation became even more complex when, 3 months after the family meeting, they received an unexpected call. It was from the care center where Ms. May was staying. The elderly woman had taken a fall and was in the hospital. Emily rushed to see her, accompanied by Catherine and Michael. At the hospital, the doctor explained that Ms. May had broken her hip and would need delicate surgery. At her age, any surgical procedure was risky. "She's asking to speak with you," said the nurse. When they entered the room, Ms. May was conscious but visibly frail. "Emily," she said in Mandarin, "come here." Emily approached the bed and took the elderly woman's hand. "How are you feeling, Nai-Nai?" "Old and tired," Ms. May replied with a weak smile, "but happy, very happy." "Why?" "Because I got to see you all together. I got to see my girl with her real family." Catherine moved to the other side of the bed. "Ms. May, you're going to be okay. The doctors will take care of you." Ms. May looked at Catherine with clear eyes. "Catherine, thank you for forgiving this foolish old woman." "Ms. May, no, let me speak. I made a terrible mistake. I tore a family apart out of selfishness. But I also raised a wonderful girl, and now you're all together again." Michael stepped closer. "Ms. May, you're part of our family now. We'll take care of you. You're good kids. Emily was lucky to find you." Ms. May spoke for a few more minutes, switching between Mandarin and English, sharing stories of Emily's childhood and expressing her gratitude for seeing the family reunited. The surgery was scheduled for the next day. It was a risky procedure for someone Ms. May's age, but necessary. That night, Emily stayed at the hospital, refusing to leave Ms. May alone. "Emily," Michael said, "you need to rest. I can't leave her. What if she what?" Emily couldn't finish the sentence, but Michael understood. "Emily, Ms. May is a strong woman. She'll get through this surgery. But what if she doesn't? What if this is the last time I talk to her?" Catherine, who had been quiet until then, stepped forward. "Sweetheart, Ms. May knows you love her, and she knows she's leaving you in good hands. Don't torture yourself thinking the worst. I just want her to know I don't hold any grudges, that I understand why she did what she did. She knows. Anyone who sees the two of you can tell how much love there is between you." The surgery the next day took 4 hours. Emily, Catherine, and Michael waited in the lobby, supporting each other through the long hours. When the doctor finally appeared, he had good news. The surgery was successful. Ms. May is stronger than she looks. Emily broke down in tears of relief. The following weeks were a slow but steady recovery. Ms. May would need to use a wheelchair permanently, but she was alive and surprisingly more lucid than she had been in months. The doctor said sometimes a shock can temporarily improve dementia symptoms, Michael explained to Emily. She might have more clarity than we expected. During Ms. May's recovery, something special happened. Catherine began visiting the elderly woman regularly, and the two developed an unlikely friendship. Catherine learned some Mandarin to communicate better with Ms. May, and Ms. May taught Catherine some traditional Chinese recipes. "It's strange," Emily remarked to Michael one day. "The two most important women in my life have become friends." "It's not strange. It's perfect. They have you in common." "I think they're conspiring against me," Emily laughed. "Yesterday I caught them planning my birthday together." Emily's birthday truly did become a special celebration. It was the first one she celebrated with her biological family since she was a baby, and Catherine made sure it would be unforgettable. The party was held at the restaurant, which closed to outside customers. Catherine and Ms. May cooked together, creating a menu that blended American and Chinese dishes. Michael invited some close friends, and for the first time, Emily felt truly celebrated. "Thank you," she said to Catherine and Michael during the party, "for all of this." "You don't have to thank us for being a family," Catherine replied. "But I want to. You've given me a life I never thought I could have." That night, after everyone had left, the three of them stayed at the restaurant talking. "Emily," Michael said, "can I ask you something?" "Of course." "Are you happy? Truly happy?" Emily thought for a moment. "Yes, sometimes it's still confusing and scary, but yes, I'm happy." "And you don't regret telling the truth?" "Never. No matter how complicated it was worth it for moments like this." Catherine smiled. "And we're happy to have our family whole again, even with all the trouble it brought." "What trouble?" Michael asked. "You've only brought joy into our lives." "And some delicious recipes," Catherine added, making everyone laugh. That night, when Emily returned home, she had moved to an apartment near Catherine's house. She reflected on everything that had happened over the past few months. Her life had completely changed. She had a family who loved her, a thriving business, and a sense of belonging she had never experienced before. There were challenges, of course. Some days were still hard, especially when cultural differences led to misunderstandings. But she had learned that family wasn't about perfection. It was about choosing to stay together, even when things got complicated. Ms. May remained an important part of her life. The elderly woman had become a kind of matriarch to the extended family, offering wisdom and stories to Emily, Catherine, and Michael alike. The restaurant also flourished. The Golden Bridge became one of the city's most sought-after dining spots, known not just for its delicious food, but for the inspiring story of a family reunited through cooking. And Emily? Emily finally understood what it meant to belong somewhere. She had spent her whole life feeling like a piece that didn't fit anywhere. But now she realized that maybe the problem wasn't her. Maybe she just needed to find the right puzzle. One December evening, exactly a year after she had spoken Mandarin in front of Michael for the first time, Emily was in the restaurant's kitchen preparing a special dinner to celebrate the Golden Bridge's one-year anniversary. Michael walked into the kitchen and found her focused on a recipe Ms. May had taught her as a child. "You know," he said, leaning against the counter, "sometimes I still can't believe you worked here for 6 months without me knowing who you were." Emily smiled. "Sometimes I can't either. It feels like another life." "Do you regret anything? Not telling the truth sooner, wasting so much time being afraid?" "But without that time, maybe we wouldn't have been ready for this reunion." Emily stopped cooking and looked at her brother. "You think so?" "I'm sure. Everything happened at the right time." Just then, Catherine walked into the kitchen carrying a tray. "Ms. May sent this for you," she said, setting the tray on the counter. It was a selection of small Chinese sweets, each carefully prepared despite the elderly woman's physical limitations. "She made these herself?" Emily asked, touched. "With a little help from her physical therapist. She wanted to contribute to tonight's dinner." Emily picked up one of the sweets and felt tears in her eyes. "Even after everything, she still takes care of me." "That's what mothers do," said Catherine softly. "All of them, the biological ones and the ones of the heart." Michael watched the two most important women in his life and felt a deep gratitude for everything they had achieved together. "You know what I think," he said. "I think we're the luckiest family in the world." "Why?" asked Emily. "Because we lost each other and still managed to find our way back. Because we overcame hurt and anger. Because we learned that family isn't just blood, it's choice, it's commitment, it's daily love. Catherine and Emily exchanged glances and smiled. "You're right," said Emily. "We're very lucky." That night's dinner was perfect. Customers and friends gathered not just to celebrate the restaurant's success, but the family love story that had made it all possible. Ms. May was there in her wheelchair, smiling as she watched Emily serve dishes that blended the two cultures now part of her identity. During the celebration, Michael raised a toast. "A year ago, I didn't know my sister was working right beside me. Today, I can't imagine my life without her. This restaurant isn't just a business. It's proof that families can heal, can grow, can reinvent themselves, and that secrets, when finally revealed, can be freeing instead of destructive," Emily added. Catherine lifted her glass, and that it's never too late to start over. With Emily's help, Ms. May also raised her glass, saying something in Mandarin that Emily translated. She said, "May the next generations not repeat our mistakes, but also learn that love can mend anything." The following year brought even more positive changes. The restaurant expanded again, this time opening a cooking school where Emily taught traditional Chinese dishes and Catherine taught homemade American cuisine. Michael met a French chef at a culinary event and began a serious relationship. Emily also found love, with a history teacher fascinated by the Thompson Chen family story. Ms. May continued living at the care center, but became a constant presence in the family's life. She became an honorary grandmother, not just to Emily, but to the entire extended family that had formed around the restaurant. On a fall afternoon, 2 years after their reunion, Emily was helping Ms. May sort through old photos when she found one she'd never seen before. It showed her and Michael as children, but there was a third child in the picture, a slightly older boy. "Nai Nai, who is this boy?" Emily asked in Mandarin. Ms. May looked at the photo and her face lit up. "That's Chen Wei, my real grandson." Emily's heart raced. "You have another grandson?" "I did. I don't know where he is now. We lost touch when he went to live with his father in China." Emily studied the photo again. The boy looked about 7, which would make him around 35 now. "Would you like to find him?" Tears filled Ms. May's eyes. "I would, but I don't even know where to start." That evening, Emily told Michael and Catherine about the discovery. "So now we have another family mystery to solve?" Michael asked. "Seems like it. And you know what that means. Our family might get even bigger," Catherine finished with a smile. "Would you help me look for him?" "Emily," Michael said, "after everything we've been through, you even have to ask?" And so began a new search. This time, it wasn't about reuniting lost members of the Thompson family, but helping Ms. May reconnect with her biological grandson. The search for Chen Wei would prove far more complicated than finding Emily had been. He was on the other side of the world, in a different country, speaking a different language. But the Thompson Chen family had learned that when it came to reuniting families, no obstacle was too great. 6 months later, after much investigative work and many international phone calls, they managed to locate Chen Wei. He was a successful engineer in Shanghai, married with 2 young children. The reunion between Ms. May and her grandson took place over a video call, with Emily serving as the translator. It was an emotional moment for everyone involved. Chen Wei was surprised and moved to discover that his grandmother was alive and living in the United States. He shared that he had tried to find her for years, but didn't know where to look. "He wants to come visit us," Emily translated after the call, "and he wants to bring his family." "How wonderful," exclaimed Catherine. "Our international family just keeps growing." 3 months later, Chen Wei arrived in the United States with his wife and their 5-year-old twin sons. The in-person reunion between him and Ms. May was even more emotional than the video call. Emily found herself once again in the role of translator, but this time between her new Chinese cousin and her American family. It was a surreal and wonderful experience all at once. "You know," Chen Wei said to Emily in English, which they both spoke, "my grandmother always talked about a Brazilian girl she raised. I thought it was just one of those confused stories old people tell." "She never stopped talking about you either," Emily replied. "She has a box full of letters she wrote to you over the years." "Letters? Letters she never sent because she didn't know your address." Chen Wei was deeply moved to hear this. The visit from Chen Wei's family lasted 2 weeks and was one of the most enriching experiences the Thompson Chen family had ever had. The Chinese children played with Michael and learned a few words in English. Chen Wei's wife, Lin, took an interest in American cuisine and exchanged recipes with Catherine. And Chen Wei was fascinated by the story of how Emily and Michael had reunited. "It's incredible," he said during dinner at the restaurant. "Ms. May separated one family and then helped reunite another." "Life has its ironies," Michael replied. "But what matters is that we're all together now," Emily added. "Not all of us," Chen Wei said with a mysterious smile. "What do you mean?" "Well, I might have more information about our extended family." Everyone turned to look at him. "What kind of information?" "My grandmother had a sister who moved to Canada in the 1970s. I know where she lives." The silence that followed was broken by Ms. May speaking excitedly in Mandarin. "What is she saying?" Catherine asked. Emily translated. "She's saying her sister Mei Ling is still alive, has children and grandchildren in Canada, and always wanted to reconnect with the family." Michael shook his head, laughing. "Our family grows bigger every day." "And do you want to know the best part?" Chen Wei said. "Mei Ling has a granddaughter around Emily's age who's always wanted to visit the United States." Emily looked at Michael and Catherine. "I think we're going to need more tables at the restaurant." And so, what had begun as a story of 2 separated siblings turned into an international family saga. The Thompson Chen family continued to grow, bringing together members scattered across 3 continents. But the most important thing wasn't the size of the family, it was the love that bound them. Emily had learned that family wasn't defined just by blood or by geographic closeness. It was defined by choice, by commitment, by being there for the moments that mattered. 2.5 years after that first phone call in Mandarin in the restaurant kitchen, Emily was once again in that same kitchen, preparing a feast for yet another family reunion. This time it was to welcome the Canadian family who had decided to move to the United States. Michael walked into the kitchen and found her smiling as she cooked. "What are you thinking about?" he asked. "I'm thinking about how much has changed. Remember when you dropped that pot of sauce because you heard me speaking Mandarin? How could I forget? That was the beginning of everything. Sometimes I wonder what would have happened if I hadn't answered that phone that day. We probably would have found out the truth some other way. Some things are just meant to be." Emily stopped cooking and looked at her brother. "Do you think we were destined to find each other again?" "I think we were destined to be a family, and families always find a way to stay together." Just then, Catherine walked into the kitchen, followed by Ms. May in her wheelchair. "How are the preparations coming along?" Catherine asked. "Almost ready," Emily replied. "Just need to—" She was interrupted by the ringing of the yellow kitchen phone. They all exchanged glances and laughed. "This time I know it's just another family member calling," Emily said as she picked up. "Wei?" she said in Mandarin. It was Chen Wei, calling from the airport to say the Canadian family had arrived and were on their way to the restaurant. "They're here," Emily announced after hanging up. "Perfect," said Catherine. "I think our table will need a few more chairs." "Our table always has room for one more," Michael said. Ms. May said something in Mandarin, and Emily translated. She said that after so many years of separating families, she now wants to spend the rest of her life helping bring them together. "And that's exactly what we'll do," Catherine said, kissing the elderly woman's forehead. When the first guests began arriving at the restaurant that evening, Emily took a quiet moment to look at everything they had built together. There were people of all ages, speaking 3 different languages, sharing food that blended culinary traditions from 3 continents. Children ran between tables, adults shared stories, and elders passed down wisdom. And at the center of it all was love. Love that had survived separation, lies, distance, and time. Love that had grown and multiplied, creating a web of connections that stretched across the world. "Emily," a voice called from behind her. She turned and saw her boyfriend, David, approaching with 2 glasses of wine. "How are you feeling?" he asked. "Grateful, so very grateful." "Why?" "For having the courage to speak Mandarin that day. For Michael dropping that pot. for our mother keeping all those letters, for Ms. May finally telling the truth. David smiled. You're grateful for the coincidences. They weren't coincidences. They were signs it was time for our family to come together. And now? Now we'll keep growing. We'll keep finding each other. And we'll keep proving that love always finds a way. That night, as the celebration continued around her, Emily quietly reflected on everything she had learned over the years. She had learned that secrets, even those kept with good intentions, could cause decades of pain. But she had also learned that the truth, no matter how painful at first, always set you free. She had learned that family wasn't perfect, and that love required daily effort, patience, and constant forgiveness. But she had also learned that when you were willing to put in the work, the rewards were greater than anything you could imagine. She had learned it was never too late to start over, to forgive, to try again. And that sometimes the most beautiful things in life grew from the hardest moments. But most of all, she had learned that belonging to a family wasn't a right automatically granted at birth. It was a gift earned day after day, choice after choice, act of love after act of love. And as she watched her extended family celebrating around her, Emily knew she had finally found her place in the world. She wasn't just a cook in a restaurant, or an orphan raised by strangers, or a woman lost between two cultures. She was Emily Thompson Chen, Michael's sister, Catherine's daughter, Ms. May's adopted granddaughter, Chen Wei's cousin, future aunt to children who hadn't even been born yet, a bridge between cultures, countries, and generations. She was exactly who she needed to be, and her family, this beautiful, complex, multicultural, multilingual family they had built together from the pieces of several broken families, was exactly what she had always been searching for without knowing it. The Hope Village restaurant and its Golden Bridge continued to thrive, becoming not just a place for good food, but a symbol of hope for separated families around the world. The story of the Thompson Chens spread, and they began receiving letters and visits from people who had lost touch with their loved ones and sought inspiration to keep searching. Emily and Michael even set up a small assistance fund for families needing resources to reunite, funded by the restaurant's profits and donations from customers touched by their story. 2 years after the last family reunion, Emily was back in the restaurant's kitchen, but this time, she wasn't alone. Beside her, an 8-year-old girl helped her prepare jiaozi. Aunt Emily, the girl said in Portuguese with a Chinese accent, "Can I make a heart-shaped jiaozi?" "Of course you can, Sophie," Emily replied, smiling at Chen Wei's youngest daughter, who had moved permanently to the United States. "Heart-shaped jiaozi are the tastiest." "Why?" "Because they're made with extra love." Michael walked into the kitchen just then, carrying his 2-year-old son in his arms. "How are my favorite chefs doing?" "We're making heart jiaozi," Sophie announced proudly. "How wonderful. Ethan will love them," Michael said, referring to the son in his arms. Emily looked at her nephew and felt her heart warm. Ethan had been born 2 years earlier, and his arrival had made their family feel even more complete. He was growing up speaking Portuguese and Chinese, and already showed an interest in staying in the kitchen with the adults. "Where's Grandma Catherine?" Emily asked. "Outside, teaching Chinese to the Canadian grandchildren," Michael laughed. "And Ms. May is telling them stories in 3 different languages." "Our family has turned into a language school," Emily joked. "Our family has turned into many things, and all of them are good." Just then, David walked into the kitchen carrying a box. "Emily, a package arrived for you." Emily wiped her hands and opened the box. Inside was a newly published book titled Heart-Shaped Jiaozi, Recipes and Stories of an International Family. It was the cookbook Emily had written, telling the story of the Thompson Chen family through dishes that represented their different cultures and the important moments of their lives. "It's here," she exclaimed, thrilled. "What's here?" Sophie asked. "Aunt Emily's book," Michael explained. "She wrote down all our favorite recipes and told the story of how our family came together." "Can I see?" Emily opened the book to the first page, where there was a photo of the whole family gathered at the restaurant. In the center of the photo were her and Michael, flanked by Catherine on one side and Ms. May on the other. Around them were all the other members of their extended family. This photo was taken on the day we decided to write down all the family recipes so future generations wouldn't lose any traditions, Emily explained to Sophie. Am I in the book too? Of course you are. Look here. Emily flipped through the book until she found a recipe titled Sophie's Heart-Shaped Jiaozi. Next to the recipe was a photo of the little girl making heart-shaped dumplings. Wow, Sophie exclaimed. Now I'm famous. We're all famous in this book, said Michael, because we're all part of this story. That evening, after the restaurant closed and everyone had gone home, Emily stayed alone for a few minutes, flipping through her book. Every recipe was a memory, every photo a precious moment of their lives together. She paused on the last page where she had written a dedication. To all the families who have been lost and still hope to reunite, never give up. Love always finds its way home. To Ms. May, who taught me that sometimes mistakes can lead to unexpectedly beautiful results. To Michael, who had the patience to look for me even when I was right in front of him. To Mom Catherine, who never stopped believing I'd return. And to all the future generations of the Thompson Chen family, you are proof that love multiplies when shared. With eternal love and gratitude, Emily Thompson Chen. She closed the book and smiled. It had been a long and sometimes painful journey, but every tear shed and every moment of uncertainty had been worth it. Her phone buzzed. It was a text from Chen Wei, who was in China for work. Emily, I just saw the photo of your book on social media. I'm so proud of you and our family. Can't wait to come back and celebrate with you. P.S. I found a great aunt of ours in Beijing who'd love to visit the United States. Emily laughed out loud. Even after all these years, the Thompson Chen family kept growing. She wrote back, "There's always room for one more at our table. When does she want to come?" The reply came almost immediately. "How about next month? She wants to learn how to make sweet bread." Perfect. Mum will be thrilled. Emily put her phone away and took one last look around the kitchen where it had all begun. The yellow phone still hung on the wall, now more of a historical decoration than a working device. But every now and then, she still used it to call relatives abroad, because some traditions were too important to let go. She turned off the kitchen lights and headed for the exit. Tomorrow would be another day, with new challenges, new joys, and probably new family members to meet. Because the Thompson Chen family had learned that family wasn't a destination, it was a journey. A journey that continued day after day, recipe after recipe, story after story. And Emily couldn't imagine a more beautiful journey to be on. The end. What did you think of this family reunion story? Can you imagine discovering that a co-worker is actually a long-lost sibling? Share your thoughts in the comments about how you felt following Emily and Michael's journey. If this story touched your heart, don't forget to like and subscribe for more heartwarming tales like this one.